I'm so grateful to have you here. Guys, we are joined today by one of my best friends in the entire world, Eva, who, by the way, is like not a person who is chronically online. She's normal and doesn't put her whole life on the internet. Like, this isn't like an influencer friend. Like, this is like my real life homie, Eva. I'm so excited to have you. You know that I think the world of you, and you have such an important story and an important message to share and just knowledge to share that I have been so lucky to receive about Lyme disease and what it looks like and what it feels like and how, you know, to help someone or how to be there for someone with it. And I'm just so excited to have you on and so honored that you're gonna share with the class. So thank you so much for being here.
I mean, you have, since the moment we decided we should be friends, you've always been my biggest hype woman. So lucky to be hyped by you and happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
I love you. I love you. You're an easy person to hype up, by the way, which I will get into. But first, I have to lead with the story of how we met because it's really funny. So we worked at Salesforce together back in 2019. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
June.
And that summer, we like didn't really know each other. Like, we were kind of like...
I'd heard good things. We had mutual Boulder friends. They were like,
yeah,
look out for Kelly. I was like, that's annoying that I'm going to have a Megan Fox like on my floor at work. That feels
And you would walk by me and I'd be like, that is a woman. Like, that is what an hourglass figure looks like. And like, that is a whole ass woman. And it wasn't until months later that we actually became friends. But I'd be remiss if I didn't share this silly little story because I was at Outside Lands in August with my new boyfriend, now husband, Andy. And we, again, still didn't really like know each other. And it wasn't until days later that I like learned this story. Do you want to share or should I share?
Sure do. So I am just like self-defined my best self at music festivals. The story,
100%.
Prime example. And I was just living my best life with some of our mutual close friends at Outside Lands. And I was walking through the crowd and I saw this like statue of David-esque man, like sculpted by the gods, a gift from angels, walking towards me through the crowd. 6'4", blonde, just like everything. And I turned to our mutual friend and I was like, that is the hottest man I've ever seen. And I just paused, like it was like the world stopped. And then sure enough, there's my Megan Fox coworker just comes right around holding his hand. And I was like,
you were actually the one who, by the way, told me the story. I remember we were sitting in the coffee area at Salesforce and you're like, I have a really funny story for you. Like, this is what happened at Outside Lands. And I need to just like give you like a really like a handshake on good work. Like, he's really hot. Good job.
I knew that it was going to be like a happy story for everyone. And I knew that it would be well received. So I felt comfortable oversharing it with you because, you know.
Well, now you know I'm an oversharer.
Overshares can seek out and smell overshares. So I found that. And that was the beginning of our friendship.
Also the beginning of you and Andy's friendship. And now it's funny probably all these years later because you're like, I thought he was like so hot, but now you know that he's literally like a 12-year-old boy.
He's 8.5.
Yeah.
But he is
totally
my 8.5-year-old little brother. And I love him so much, but I'm like, you're not like, he's hot, but he's like not hot.
No, like
you know?
he's like a child. Yeah. Gotta love him.
We love Sister Andy.
So Eva is one of my best friends. We both made the move to New York from San Francisco around the same time. And when we got to New York is when our friendship really kind of took off, and here we are, and you were on my bachelorette, and you were there the morning of my wedding, and you're in my wedding photos, and I'm just like, I'm obsessed with you, which would lead me into this. So Eva is one of the smartest people that I've ever met, man or woman, like smartest people I have ever met. You have both right brain and left brain intelligence, which is, I think, really hard to come by, and I think it's going to be instrumental in the changes that you make in the world, which we will get into throughout the evolution of this episode. But I just want to say how proud I am of you before we get started for choosing the path that you are on with so much intention and with the idea of helping others in mind. Like, you could have gone a million different routes. You could go be CMO of Salesforce if you wanted to. Like, there is no doubt in my mind, like, you stand on business. And the fact that you are choosing to do something good with this intelligence that God bestowed upon you is so impressive to me, and it will never not be impressive to me. So I need to say that first.
Thank you very much. It means a lot. And right back at you. I mean, we both don't forget to give yourself your flowers and take your flowers.
We give each other flowers.
Yeah, but like we both took a lot of risks and made a lot of big changes at the same time in our life. I remember like you going to esthetician school. That was shortly after I went to school. And so don't forget about yourself, shorty.
Yeah, I love you. We're having like we had a lot of parallels in our lives, which I want to just jump right in because there's a lot to cover, and this is going to, I know, help and inform a lot of people. So let's start by rewinding to life before I met you, because a lot happened from, college to now. So let's kind of start like by backing up, like backtracking. Who is Eva and how did we get here? And peppers of the, Lyme story in there.
Yeah. So as Kelly mentioned, a big part of why I'm here today is talk about having Lyme disease, my experience with Lyme disease, where that's going. So my little life story will have a bit of a health lens to it. But that actually starts when I was 13 years old. I was actually diagnosed with epilepsy, which is a seizure disorder. I'm very lucky. It's always been very under control with anti-seizure meds. But that actually was the start of me being like, wait a second, I want to do something in the healthcare space, because my dad also has epilepsy. He was very involved in the Epilepsy Foundation, and I was there. It was a very scary experience going through all this, but I was well controlled. And here I am like hearing about kids that like don't receive the medicine well, or either don't have access to meds or it doesn't work for them. And I was like, okay, I think this is like my calling. I just had to do a paper on this for grad school. What is your calling? And I was like, it started age 13. I decided like, I'm so lucky that this stuff worked for me. I had access to it. I think I want to try to just pay it forward for other people. So I actually applied to like University of Michigan with that same vision of I want to study business and bio. What a joke that I thought I was going to compete with the business kids and pre-med. That was very short-lived. But I did graduate from the University of Michigan with a bachelor's of business administration. I played around working for biotech startups, and then I tried corporate healthcare. But being with this more business background, I felt like I wasn't mature enough in my skill set, which being like a more soft skill set, to go work for a small company or a startup straight out of school. And working for corporate healthcare, I was like, this feels like part of the problem, not the solution of access to healthcare and a really equitable health experience in this country. So that's not for me right now. But it led me to actually enter into tech. LinkedIn came on our campus, was doing recruiting, and I just really resonated with the inherently good mission and vision. Their whole MO is to create economic opportunity for everyone by giving them access to a digital platform. And they revolutionize the space and really empower people. And I was like, this isn't health access, but economic opportunity feels pretty interesting and important too. So I went and worked at LinkedIn. I was there for 2 years. That's where I met our mutual bestie, Morgan. Morgan then poached me to Salesforce. I went to Salesforce. That's where we met. It just kind of shows like the chain of reactions of life. Oh, let me take it back a notch. My senior year of college, I'm from San Diego, but my grandparents were always in the Berkshires, Western Mass. And right before I went back for my senior year of college, I was in the Berkshires hiking with my family. I go back to Michigan for my senior year, and I have all these weird, like, circular rashes on my legs. I was like, that's strange. Maybe it's bed bugs. I'm moving into like a gross senior house. So I wash everything, and then sure enough, like a week later, more spots. And I'm like, this is really strange. And I also had flu-like symptoms, like maybe a fever, stuffy nose, all that. So I was like very much not someone to listen to my body or go to the doctor ever in a problematic way. But I went to urgent care, and there I was, urgent care in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which is so crazy. And they diagnosed me with Lyme disease. I had a textbook case. So the flu-like symptoms are very common. And then the other piece, the rash that I was talking about, is a bullseye-like rash. So think about it, what a bullseye looks like. It's rings of like white-ish, red-ish circles.
It's very distinguishable.
Yeah, can be, not always. That's part of the problem. But so the bullseye rashes, the flu-like symptoms, textbook case. They started me on IV antibiotics there. I had a close friend at Michigan who unfortunately had a lot of issues with Lyme. They connected me to a wonderful doctor in outside Ann Arbor, who got me on antibiotics for the next 3 months. She was also complementing that with like supplements, because being on antibiotics for an extended amount of time is really hard on your body. So that was the beginning of Lyme. And the crazy thing about it was, I had never heard of it. That's also a lie. I had heard of it because when I was about 10 in the Berkshires, my Aunt Allison, who is this little crazy spitfire of a lady at 100 pounds, she sat all 10 of us grandkids down and was like, you are going to watch this documentary on Lyme disease. This is a huge issue. She was from the Northeast, but then had lived in Oregon. And in the Northeast, everyone knew about Lyme, knew it was a problem. Everyone in her family had been affected. Then when she was then raising a family in Portland, Oregon, she was struggling with it and no one would take her seriously. And no one would give her a test.
I didn't know this, by the way.
Graham's mom.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know this.
So I had heard about Lyme when I was 10 years old, thought nothing of it until, then I'm 18, diagnosed with this. I'm like, okay, this all seems kind of manageable. I start all of these pretty intense meds. And I woke up one day to take a econ final and I couldn't read. I don't know how else to describe it. I know it sounds like a crazy thing to say, but I opened my laptop. I was trying to, last minute cram like the procrastinator in me does. And I pulled open my laptop and my eyes were moving, but there wasn't anything connecting to my brain.
Registering.
And I freaked out, obviously, and made some phone calls, and very quickly they were like, yeah, like that's kind of normal.
It's pretty standard.
That's how Lyme goes. And when you're treating Lyme, there's something called a Herxheimer reaction, which is, the medicine is attacking the bacteria in your body. So all the symptoms get worse before they get better. So that's a Herxheimer reaction. Also a good time to keep going backwards. What is Lyme disease? So Lyme disease is a tick-borne illness. So like literally a tick, a little bug, sucks your blood.
Yep.
Really cute of it. So you get bit by a tick. I never saw the tick. A lot of people don't see the ticks, but you should absolutely do tick checks anytime you go hiking, especially in the Northeast, Northern California, but it's spreading everywhere. So you get bit by a tick. If that tick has the Lyme bacterial infection, it gives it to you. It's also very common that when you get bit by an infected tick, it doesn't just have Lyme. It probably has a whole slew of other co-bacterial infections, which is part of the complexity of the disease. So your body is just fighting this bacterial infection. And so there I am, senior year, on antibiotics for 3 months, fighting this bacterial infection and having just like really bad cognitive issues, fatigue. I feel like looking back at that time of my life, it was such a blur. I was so young and having the best time at Michigan and felt like I had the world in front of me, starting my job at LinkedIn, moving to San Francisco. So in a way, it felt like it was still monumental, but it didn't really feel like it was slowing me down because I didn't have like that much in the way of like life's responsibilities, right? Like I was so lucky I had a job lined up, and senior year is, supposed to be celebratory with your friends and whatnot. So I felt like I could kind of just deal with it and move on. And then I moved to San Francisco, and for the first 2 years living in San Francisco, my Lyme was in a remission of sorts. So what probably happened, again, there's like such little research and proof of almost anything in the Lyme space, which is extremely challenging and frustrating. But what I think happened is the antibiotics and treatment that I had been on was able to get the bacterial load down to a small enough amount and like weaken it enough to like deactivate the bacteria. And like my immune system was strong enough to keep it at bay. So I was healthy. Yeah, healthy, happy, thriving.
Obviously at the time you probably didn't know the weight or the magnitude of like what was happening. So I will go into the emotional bear of it. That comes later on because there's much more to your story. But I also want to speak to, because you've educated me so much on this, that it's like kind of a miracle in a way that you went to this rogue, urgent care.
So true.
In Michigan. And off the bat, they were able to give you a diagnosis, because what we've talked about And what I've, read online and the experiences I've heard from people, they have to fight for so long, go to countless doctors, and really advocate for themselves on an insane level, which it's a miracle they have the energy to even do that. And a lot of people don't, to get a diagnosis, because this is such a just like underrepresented or under-researched disease. And I want to talk about what happens when a doctor isn't listening to you and like how to advocate for yourself, because it's amazing that was your experience. And we've talked so much about how that's the rare experience for people to get a diagnosis.
The diagnostic piece is so tricky. So we're coming up on the 50th anniversary of when the Lyme bacteria was found or discovered, like named in Lyme, Connecticut. That's why it's called Lyme disease.
We drove through it.
We did drive through it. Very exciting moment for us all.
Yep, very monumental.
It's coming up on the 50th year, and there is still no accurate diagnostic test for it.
And what you mean by that is like there is no, like I can't walk into a doctor and say, can you just give me a blood test for Lyme? Like
You can. So if you were to go into like a traditional Western doctor's office and you could say like, I would like to be tested for Lyme disease. And your experience most places in the US would be, you don't have to worry about that. Like
you don't need it.
Lyme's not a big deal here. You don't really have those symptoms. Like, don't worry about it. And so many people just get told that Lyme's not an issue in their area, or that their symptoms aren't consistent enough, or just that they don't need it, or that Lyme's not an issue. There's so much weird misinformation and stigmatization against it. I honestly don't understand it. I'm by no means a conspiracy theorist, but I just dig deeper and deeper to try to understand why it's so stigmatized and there's so much misinformation. And I can't help but look to some of those conspiracy theories to try to make sense of it, because it's so confusing. But it's very similar to like some of the long COVID parallels. We saw this huge issue take over the United States, and everyone responded to it so weirdly, and it became so politicized and divisive. And so there's a lot of parallels between COVID and Lyme disease, and it's actually been one of the best things for Lyme. So one of the like myth busters about Lyme is that it's only in certain areas. So that's maybe one of the reasons why a doctor wouldn't test you for it. So a lot of people think, oh, it's only super endemic to the Northeast in mountainous areas, because that's where the ticks are. But with climate change, these ticks are spreading everywhere. The more that we deforest, cut forests down to put up suburbs, buildings, and whatnot, the more the planet's temperature is increasing, the more ticks' life cycles are speeding up, and all this stuff.
Thought about that. Oh my
and
God.
So now all these doctors are like, oh, Lyme disease isn't an issue here. The doctors aren't super well educated on Lyme disease in med school, which is crazy. And so they're also like, if you said, oh, I want a Lyme test and I want to go down that route, it's possible that a lot of doctors actually, like top of mind, wouldn't really know what the next steps are. Depends where you are.
Like it's not like getting a blood panel. Like you're like, okay, like add like a Lyme test. It's not that simple.
It can be. So the blood test that you would get is a antibody test. It's called the Western blot. There's like a 2-part test to it, and you get a blood test, and the blood test tests to see if you have antibodies for Lyme disease in your body.
Okay.
So that means that there once was Lyme in your body created an antibody to respond to the bacteria, and the blood test is showing proof of that antibody. But what the blood test isn't showing is proof of the bacteria.
I see.
So that is the crux of the diagnostic issue, is that the blood test can only say Kelly and Eva had Lyme at some point in their body, and their body had a reaction to it. But it can't say Eva and Kelly have Lyme in this moment.
Right.
And without that proof, like insurers won't cover certain things for Lyme disease.
Medications or treatments.
Because they can't prove that you have it in this moment. And the antibody test itself is super inaccurate and less effective, because Lyme disease spurs a lot of autoimmunity. And your immune system is what creates the antibodies. So if you're using a test to look for antibodies, but the bacteria is making you have a suppressed immune system, it's like a chicken or the egg situation where you're just not going to get to the bottom of it.
Right. There's so much to unpack here. And because I want to get on to the, where I don't want to say like your Lyme journey really starts, but I feel like I was I remember the day, which by the way we'll get into. But the one thing that I just want to ask is like, because I actually don't know the answer to this question, is if untreated, just like if someone doesn't know they have Lyme, or if they get a test and it says that they at one point had the antibodies for Lyme, does some people, like, is it possible for some people to flush out Lyme disease without medication and antibiotics?
Yeah. So again, so many parallels between Lyme disease and COVID.
Right.
So COVID, a lot of us got it. 80% of the population got it. Some people didn't know, were asymptomatic. Some people got it, were super sick, but their body fought it off. Then 20% of people that have like bad autoimmune genetics, a weak immune system, whatever, 20% of the people that got COVID had long COVID.
Yep.
And so those symptoms of brain fog, fatigue, arthritic joint pain, like that never went away. And so that is a almost perfect mirror image of what happens with people with Lyme. So it's possible that some people, I definitely don't know what percentage are like asymptomatic, but I'm sure it's possible that some people get bit by a tick and like their body can deal with it. I don't know anything about that though, to be transparent. What happens with, again, 80% of the population is that people get bit, they have that textbook case, they're lucky enough to get diagnosed and treated quickly. And when they start taking antibiotics, when the bacteria is just in their bloodstream, the antibiotics can flush it out. So they're fine. For 20% of the people that either don't catch it in time, bad autoimmune markers, weak immune system, the bacteria can get into their central nervous system and beyond just the bloodstream. And once it's in there, antibiotics can't get into your central nervous system through your blood-brain barrier. So it can't get in there to fight it.
Right.
So that's where the chronic Lyme issue happens,
into play,
where you have bacteria in places where there's not a modern day Western pharmaceutical to get it and to attack it.
That makes sense. It's more, so to simplify, it's like the sooner that you can get on antibiotics, catch it, and start fighting it, the better. And the less likely it is to wreak havoc in the long term.
100%.
Essentially.
100%. And like the step before that is prevention.
Yeah.
And so such a huge issue with this is just that like people don't know that anytime they're outside, their dogs are outside, they're hiking, they're again playing at recess, whatever. When you come inside, you should just do like a quick
scan,
just like quick little tick check, look around. And then, you know, if you ever do find those things, just an ounce of prevention can go such a long way.
Awareness.
Exactly. So that's even before that. And I will say, just to go back to the diagnostic thing a little bit, if you do want to get diagnosed, you can ask for that Western blot. There's also, I don't know if like a boutique provider makes sense in that.
Like a One Medical situation?
Not a One Medical. There's a lab called IGeneX and Stony Brook that both offer different types of like Lyme diagnostic panels. I think IGeneX just got FDA approved.
Okay.
And so that's, I think, the primary one. So either, you know, you can ask for Western blot, you can look into getting the IGeneX test. But just to emphasize how much of the diagnostic piece is the issue, and if you don't get diagnosed, then you can't get treated.
You can't get the antibiotics.
And then it can become chronic.
Right.
So it's like first there's the prevention, then there's the diagnostic. And we mentioned my Aunt Allison before. So she was born and raised in the Northeast, Cape Cod. Most people in her family had it, very well versed in it. And she was living with her family in Portland, Oregon, my cousin Graham, who we both know and love. And Graham told me this story recently. He said it was one of his first vivid memories. She had been sick and struggling with Lyme symptoms for years, and she was going around to doctors in the Portland area begging for a Lyme test, and no one would give her one, which is also just like, what do you have to gain?
Yeah, like just give it to me. Just give me the goods.
Like, insurance should cover at least one round of testing, and like it just is so confusing. Anyway, she was begging doctors to give it to her. They wouldn't give it to her. I was talking about this with my family over Thanksgiving. She and my Uncle Robbie started to feel like they were crazy, because they were both Northeastern people. They're like, we know this is Lyme, but no one is listening to us. No one is taking this seriously. Why can't we just get this test? So they started to doubt themselves. They went so far as to go, my aunt found a tick in her, had the flu-like symptoms, had the bullseye rash, and was at a doctor being like, I need a Lyme test. And she showed the doctor her bullseye rash, and the doctor said to her, you cut yourself shaving.
Sure.
My cousin Graham, 8 years old at the time, always a loudmouth. He stood up and he said, "My mom does not cut herself shaving."
She sure doesn't. She sure doesn't. Good Graham.
And
Good on Graham.
I can't help but laugh. It's like not a funny story
No,
at all, but it's just absolutely mind-boggling. And that story, it's important to share multiple Lyme stories as we have this conversation, because this is just, I'm sharing bits and pieces of my story. I'm talking about my Aunt Allison's story, but there are so many complicated, varying stories in the Lyme space. And so that's part of the problem too, is like I had an easy diagnostic, but then my chronic stuff came later. My Aunt Allison had a horrible time getting diagnosed, even though she knew what she needed to be diagnosed from.
Right.
And like, so anyway, that's just another example of this wicked problem.
No, I appreciate you. Like, you are able to decenter yourself from the conversation, but the conversation right now that we're having, like, is your story, and it's an important story, because also now we're going to get into this, which you had, this great experience where you were being, treated for it right off the bat. So that was what, like 2017?
Yeah.
So 2017, Ann Arbor, Michigan, we attack it. We got the antibiotics. We're a young adult, like ready to rock and roll into our adult life. Now we fast forward 2 years to, what was it? It must have been like September of 2019. Not me like remembering the timeline. Okay. September of 2019. We're both working at Salesforce. I remember this day very vividly. We were like working on something. Like, I think I was aligned to something that you might have been like, or I was trying to pass you like some opportunity. I don't know. And I remember someone told me like, Eva is dealing with like a health situation. There was mold found in her apartment, and it has triggered her Lyme. I didn't even know that you had Lyme. So let's take it from there as to like what, because it's like you like relapsed.
Yeah. So again, my belief is that I got the bacteria weak and inactive enough that I was in remission of sorts. All of these terms and technological terms have to be shared very carefully, because there's so much lack of consensus in even the doctor and medical research communities. So I'm not an expert. There's also like very little information and access. So we're just doing the best we can. But I believe I was in a remission of sorts. And I moved into a moldy apartment in San Francisco, June 2019, which was also the same time I started at Salesforce on that team with you.
Which, pause, I want to also just add, like, you didn't know you were moving into a moldy apartment. Like, you weren't like, yeah, sign me up.
I didn't, but I also did, which is the crazy part. Like, we're talking about Lyme right now mostly, but also beware of molds.
Right.
Mold is everywhere.
It is.
It's a natural part of life and the world, and so it's unavoidable. And there are different types of mold, and not all mold is created equal.
We could go down a rabbit hole.
Whatever. But just know that in the same way you should do tick checks and not take ticks lightly, you should also be on the lookout for mold and not take mold lightly. So I move into this apartment. I start seeing mold in the bathroom. I'm like, right, there's water in the bathroom.
What did it look like?
In the bathroom, it was just like, little gray fuzzies here or there. Then it started getting worse and worse. And I had this shoe rack in my room. And in my shoes and purses, like, I started to see like even more aggressive cotton ball-y looking gray molds in smaller amounts at first. But I was like, that can't be normal. That seems crazy. And so I alerted my landlord about all the mold, and he was like, okay, let's get the fan running in your bathroom, keep the window open, like started doing bits and pieces of things to combat it, but nothing crazy. And at that same time, I started to have symptoms like I was having when I was treating my Lyme. So for me at the time, it was horrible insomnia, night sweats where like my sheets were dripping, soaking wet. And for me, it's always been a lot of cognitive symptoms. A lot of stuff between like my brain and verbal abilities. So I would stutter or be at a loss for a certain word. I like to say that, the arcade claw.
Yep. It feels
like my brain knows what word it wants to use, but then the arcade claw like can't get the word.
The word retrieval.
You just can't get the word. I also would seamlessly mix up two words in the same sentence, and it would come out of my mouth perfectly, like the bluest sky. And everyone would be like, what did you just say? And I was like, I don't know. And I remember talking to my best friend, Meg, and saying, who was was part of my life at that time, also part of my life when I was going through the Lyme stuff in college. And I said, have you noticed that I'm doing some of those weird verbal mistakes like I did when I had Lyme disease? And she said, yeah. Also short-term and working memory. I know you've experienced that with me, of asking the same question a few times over a period of time. So all these symptoms were coming up. And I remembered when I had been treated for Lyme in Michigan in college, she said to me, mold and Lyme are very similar. They have very similar symptoms. They have a similar effect on the body, and they often go hand in hand because mold is everywhere. And so she tested me at the time, way back when, for mold and Lyme. I only had Lyme. Now all this is happening. I'm literally seeing the mold, and I'm having these crazy symptoms. So I was like, I know that something's wrong.
Yeah.
So I went back to that doctor. I told her what was happening. I asked for a full blood panel for like Lyme and mold stuff. And then the mold kept getting worse and worse. And we had told my landlord about it, and he was taking it seriously, but not moving super, super fast. And so I was like, I'm just going to get a mold test in here. I had mold people come in, and Halloween that year, they were like, you have toxic mold, a lot of it, in your apartment.
Like, you've just been breathing this.
And my blood test came back just like crazy. My Lyme markers were super high. My mold markers were super high. And that was the beginning of the end.
I remember it was like, I was just starting to get to know you, and it was like, it really like freaked me out for you. Like,
you and me both.
You're thinking about like the most intimate like place where you go to just like be safe and cozy every night, and like it was literally infecting you.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I feel like things really changed in your life in terms of the series, because Lyme wasn't like a part of you or like your like like life or your story like when I first met you, and then very like this is, you know, a big part of Eva now. Over the last few years, it has been like an on and off, which it's not like ever off, but sometimes things are more heightened. And like you said, and you know, I love you, and I didn't know anything about Lyme before I met you. It's not that I was naive to it, but like I've seen it in action before, and like I said, you're one of the smartest people that I know. And so for me to actually like actively see you misremember something or just not remember something that was like pretty short term, or like you said, it is crazy because like you would say something and it would be like, it would just flow out of your mouth. Like I'd buy it. Like, you know what I mean? I would buy what you're selling still. But I could really see it in action. And one of the things that we talk about is how Lyme is one of those things that's almost like a silent killer, not in the literal, but like a silent killer in the sense where
it is literally a silent killer.
People will be like, but you look so good. But you're a Pilates teacher. But you're in grad school. Like, people will be like, but you're doing this. But you're doing that. It's like, it's kind of this, it is stigmatized in this way. And I remember, and I don't know anything about the evolution of Yolanda Hadid's experience with Lyme. Like, I don't. But I remember when I was watching Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, there was a whole storyline about, you know, people accusing her of having Munchausen's and convincing herself she was sick because she wasn't doing well. And then they were like, well, but she did this, but she did that, but she has energy that day. And there was like this selective understanding of like when and how you can be sick and when and how you can look sick. And I want to talk a little bit about that because I don't really think that people understand that Lyme can look very different for a lot of people and at different times. And I think it's been really heightened or more manageable for you at certain times. And I want to talk about like how that affects you both physically and emotionally, because it's a lot to carry.
Just to pick up on the story, my life was fully flipped upside down. I had to demold everything I owned. I had to fully reboot my immune system. I went back on antibiotics for 3 months, which is really hard on your body. Coming with that came a celiac disease diagnosis. Because it, you know, spurs other autoimmune issues. And so after that whole mold thing, I just was like in a state of despair, essentially, trying to get healthy. And, you know, you can do the antibiotics when there's presumed a lot of bacterial infection in your body to kill it. But then other than that, it's just trying to keep your immune system as healthy and functioning as possible to keep the bacteria at bay. during that period of time, I kind of took like little mini leave of absences from work. I thought about officially filing for medical leave, but I had the most incredible boss and team at the time. And I also am just like naturally a very high energy, high output person.
Yes.
And so even in my like chaotic times or crisis mode or low points, like I can still put out enough or act in a way that seems like normal and whatnot. And again, that's part of like the problem of people not realizing what my experience is. So I went, off and on many medical leaves. I was trying everything. I went to a bunch of different doctors, and that was for the rest of my time living in San Francisco. And I think the way I would categorize my health then, and also I will say that I honestly, coming out of like the first like actual crisis mode, like once I got the mold stuff more under control of like changing my environment and doing the initial like antibiotic cleanse, whatever. After that, like I didn't slow down my life that much. I changed the way I was living my life. So I was on supplements and medicine every day. I was on really clean diets. I was doing hot yoga every day because the detoxing was helping. I was really regimented about 8 hours of sleep. So like I was living a really regimented life to keep my immune system better. But other than that, like I didn't slow down. I was still working a ton, playing hard, working hard, all of that stuff. And in that, I would relapse every 3 months. So I would get healthy enough. Healthy enough was still like, again, I'm doing everything under the sun and I'm still having little symptoms, but they're manageable. And then like every 3 months, something weird would happen. Like I would get a crazy rash, or I would have like a really bad stomach bug and suddenly not be able to eat some food. And it was something different every 3 months. So I wasn't healthy, it was just like a very reactive, like putting Band-Aids on.
Keeping yourself afloat.
Yeah, just keeping my head like above water, just like this. And then I moved to New York City. I got a really, really, really awesome Chinese doctor here. Most people in the chronic Lyme community have to turn to Eastern and holistic medicine because, so again, we talk about like misinformation, stigmatization, lack of research, et cetera. A lot of the Western community does not believe that chronic Lyme is real. And I have been told by multiple doctors that chronic Lyme is real. And I'm like, I'm still sick.
Right.
It's been 8 years.
Right.
Riddle me that.
Right.
What do I have? I'm open.
This isn't fun for you.
I'm open to something else.
Like
you
this
tell
isn't
me.
fun for Eva.
Yeah.
Eva's not making this up like for the plot.
Yeah. And so their rationale is that, and there's a wonderful documentary that I've been so lucky to cross paths with. It's had such a huge impact on my life, my loved ones' lives. It's called The Quiet Epidemic. It does the most incredible job distilling the wicked Lyme disease problem into something so digestible and understandable in 2 hours. So everyone watch that. So it does a good job of explaining this. But basically, in some parts of the medical and research community, they have decided that once you take antibiotics, there's no way that there could be any remaining bacteria. Which, like, when you say that out loud, it's like, but couldn't there all? How is that possible? Why are you so certain that there's no more bacteria left? So they then say that there can't be any more bacterial infection after that, and any remaining symptoms you may have are just your immune system in a still bad feedback loop and like pattern loop of having symptoms, even though there's no bacteria present. So they call that post-Lyme disease treatment symptom syndrome.
Couldn't we just call, like, isn't that chronic Lyme?
Well, chronic Lyme means that there's a chronic bacterial infection.
Like the bacteria is still in. Then what they're saying is, no, it's just your immune system, like, repeating the same behaviors because it still thinks it's there. It's gaslighting itself.
Exactly. Exactly. Great simplification. So yeah, so the Western health system a lot doesn't recognize that chronic Lyme is a thing. And even though there are some practitioners that do, there's no treatment options other than like that. It's usually doxycycline, the antibiotic that you take for it.
Will fuck you sideways, doxycycline. Yeah. Can we just like level set here? Like that shit is no joke.
And honestly, like of all the things, I haven't even had that crazy of experiences from doxycycline. Like,
oh my God, I vomit. I don't throw up. I don't throw up ever. I took doxycycline. They gave it to me after I got back from Bali to kill my parasite.
Yeah.
They were like,
Checks
just
out.
to be sure, let's kill it off with this. I was vomiting. Like, they don't say, I mean, they probably said on the bottle, don't take it on an empty stomach, but I did. And then I was unwell. So yeah, doxycycline will fuck you up.
Yeah. So if you do go to a Western health system, ask for a Lyme test, they give you the Western blot, then you're going to treat it. They'll likely give you doxycycline for a week to 3 months, depending on, doctor situation, whatever. And after that, there's nothing they can do for you. And insurance will cover a round of antibiotics. But if you want long-term antibiotics to fight a more chronic infection, et cetera, insurance usually will not cover anything more than that first round of antibiotics because you can't prove that chronic Lyme is a thing. Many people don't believe in it. And so therefore, they will not financially cover something that is not real.
That sounds like them. That checks out. I want to also get to where we are today because you have done an incredible job of using your, I don't want to use the word suffering because I don't want to make you feel like this, you're carrying the weight of this big thing, but you are. You have done a really incredible job of turning any ounce of suffering that you have endured into fuel to create long-term change. And we are we're in like the baby stages, and I'm so excited and just proud and like just in awe of you all the time because I know we're just here, and I know when I'm like 50 years old and my kids need an internship at like a amazing nonprofit that is like so recognized, they're just gonna call like Auntie Eva for an internship because she created it. Like that's like genuinely how I feel. It'll make me cry if I think about it for too long. But before we get to that, I want to ask, how are you today? Just today.
Mm-hmm. So again, so much to say. I can't even get it all out
it's
at
hard.
once.
Yeah.
But where I was starting to end my last thought was because the Western system isn't really equipped to accept or treat chronic Lyme, many people have to go to Eastern and functional doctors. So I came to New York. I had an incredible Chinese practitioner that put me on garlic pills. You heard that right.
Yep.
For 2 years. And
how many?
I mean, 6 a day.
Yeah.
High dose. So garlic's an antimicrobial naturally. And I mean, every ancient culture forever and always used garlic as a like healing agent, fighting agent, whatever. But never forget moving to New York and seeing this new doctor and them saying, you're going to be on high dose garlic. And I said, am I going to smell bad? And they said, yes, you're going to smell bad. And I called my best friend and I said, Alexa, I'm 26 years old. I'm single. I just moved to New York. I'm going to smell like garlic. And she said, how long are you doing this treatment for? And I said, I think it's 6 months. It was February. She said, start that shit tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
You can be like, this garlic thing is fine, but you cannot be on garlic in a New York City summer. So anyway, the garlic pills.
For what it's worth, I never smelled it.
Except for once.
For once.
You told me I had bad breath one time. Which
it was just garlic.
Right.
It was straight garlic.
Right.
But
So anyway, that's how you know you have honest friends when they do tell you the one time it happened. I got very lucky. I did not smell. I also found the most incredible acupuncturist through this experience, Dr. Yoko Momo. She is my absolute healer, everything. I see her every Thursday. She's the highlight of my week. And so this new chapter in New York, because you asked how I'm doing today.
Yes.
And I'm telling you all the things that I need to do.
Which, by the way, this was my next question. So feel free to wrap them up in a bow into what treatments have you done and how are you doing today?
So start with the Chinese doctor. I'm on the garlic. I'm doing acupuncture. I started also doing chiropractor. I started doing Pilates. I, at the time, was eating vegan. Again, like 8 hours of sleep, always, everything under the sun that I can to just get that immune system stable. And I got to a pretty okay place. But then Lyme is a tricky, smart mofo. And
so smart.
It starts to outsmart whatever you're treating it with. So my Lyme was outsmarting the garlic pills, and I had to walk away, which, like, if we're being honest, we weren't that upset. I wasn't that upset.
I understand.
So I had to look for new treatment. And in my personal life at the time, I was in Europe. I had gone to Europe for a work event, still working at Salesforce. And I love the smile on your face.
I keep going.
Okay. So I was in Europe. I was working really hard, and I get to Europe and I finished the event, and then I had 2 weeks of PTO, and I'd never taken 2 weeks of consecutive PTO in my working life. And the first week happens, and I'm like, great, I've done this before. And the second week happened, and I entered this new, deeper state of relaxation and bliss. And I thought to myself, this is what life is. Mm-hmm. So this is what your body feels like, and this is how you process reality when you're just living life, when you're not
in fight or fucking flight all the time.
Yeah, and that from the chronic health and, corporate America, like that combo is just such a different state of mind and state of being. And so I finally entered just normal life mode. And at the same time, Roe v. Wade had been overturned. And I was solo traveling, and I was interacting with extremely lovely Europeans that would just make such remarks of disgust towards me. How could you guys allow this to happen? And I'm like,
oh my God.
I wish I could tell you. I wish I had any of the answers for you. And so I thought to myself, if I'm giving up this quality of life to be like a workaholic of sorts, which I think I probably always will be, then I probably shouldn't do it to make tech shareholders richer if Roe v. Wade just got overturned.
No, like Uncle Mark will be fine.
Yeah, like I am so lucky. I don't have college loans that I need to pay off or children that I need to support where I'm like holding on to my beautiful, stunning tech salary. Mm-hmm. I'm in a position where I'm young, I'm single, and I'm relatively financially stable. I should be someone taking more of a risk to invest in doing good because that's where I'm feeling called. Mm-hmm. So that was a big aha moment for me. And I decided then that my way to approach that, I grew up around like a family business and always had kind of entrepreneurial spirit. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, I think I want to try to start my own thing or be part of something smaller, because I think that in smaller environments, that's where you can maintain the integrity of doing the good you want to see. I had been drawn to tech because they have these robust corporate social responsibility initiatives, but at scale, like you just can't maintain those authentically, Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, I got to do something small, but I'm really ADHD. I know you know what that's like. And I wrote in my notes app late one night when I couldn't sleep thinking about my future, grad school or Adderall. And I just decided, I was like, if I want to make something small, I need structure to help me get it off the ground.
And if I want to make something fast as fuck, I need a 20 milligram instant release prescription during a shortage immediately.
Yeah. And so I decided that I was going to go to grad school because I wanted a beautiful little sandbox where I could sit and they would hand me tools and then I would build something and then I would leave grad school and I would have a castle. And I had already done business undergrad, and I felt that for what I wanted to do, the skill set that I already had, et cetera, going back and doing an MBA would be a bit redundant for me. And I wanted a new skill set and toolkit. And weirdly, sometime during COVID, I had watched The Social Dilemma about Facebook. Mm-hmm. And there was some comment about technology being designed for evil or designed for good. Mm-hmm. And it just really stuck with me. And I went down this big design rabbit hole at the time. And so then when I wanted to come back and think about, okay, what's this toolkit that I'm missing in my life? I was like, design. What does that mean? I don't know.
No, tell me, because I was like, you're going to go make like jackets. Like you're literally going to go like start a jacket brand. And you were like, no, sweetie.
But I also, I thought I knew and liked the idea of it, but I didn't really know what it meant. And so again, just kept chasing my curiosities, going down these rabbit holes, and stumbled into strategic design. And the way that I like to describe strategic design, so we live in a world and we are all just trying to solve problems day in and day out. Mm-hmm. In the business world, how we try to solve problems are mostly based on theories and principles of economics and capitalism, because that's how the world works. I didn't make the rules.
No, correct.
In design, the way that you solve problems is different. If you think about a traditional designer, so let's say a fashion designer, they can't just start selling pants. The pants have to be wearable and usable before they can sell them. Mm-hmm. If you think about an architect, a house has to be functional and livable before you can sell the house. Mm-hmm. So designers, they start solving the problem with the end user in mind, with a human first or human centric experience.
I love when you talk. Just keep going.
Don't tell me that.
I'm sat.
Don't tell me that you love to hear me talk, because I will literally never stop. And I have a microphone in front of me. This has never happened before.
Which, by the way, we have like 6 minutes.
Oh no.
You think? Like, where should we go from here?
I'll try to go quick.
10? Okay, 10.
Okay, I'll go quick. So design is solving problems with a human first, user first experience. So it doesn't have to be making a jacket or making a house. It can just be, if you're trying to solve, I've always had this healthcare interest. So if we're trying to solve a healthcare problem, if you're solving it in more traditional business settings, it's like, okay, well, we have to make money as we solve this problem. So let's keep that very front of mind. Of course, people care about patients. I'm not saying all of that's bad, but it leads a lot with profitability. If you're approaching it in a strategic design way, you're like, okay, we have to start with the patient experience. What is that patient experience start to finish? Maybe we'll make money off of it later, but we need to start with that experience. So I went to Parsons to get a master's of strategic design and management. And thank God I took that risk on myself and didn't really know what I was doing, but it felt right. And I listened to myself, because it is the best decision I've ever made. Truly.
Trusting your gut. It'll get you places.
Yeah, it really has. And as I applied there, I applied to a Impact Entrepreneurship Fellowship, which is our social impact startup incubator, which was exactly what I wanted to do.
Mouthfuls, by the way. Like, they just roll off your tongue, but these are mouthfuls. Sorry.
It's not like this is my first time saying it,
Totally. So
I'm a story repeater.
Sorry. Fellowship, Impact Fellowship.
Impact Entrepreneurship Fellowship.
Impact Entrepreneurship.
Which is our social impact startup accelerator.
Love.
And I applied with this robust business plan to create a universal patient health record app, because all of us should have that data on our phone. It's totally feasible. I get in, and then I got sicker than I've ever gotten. Yep. So where we left off in my health journey was that the garlic pills stopped working. I was kind of kicking the can down the road of, like, I knew I needed to find a new doctor and do all these things, but life was happening and I was starting grad school, and I decided to become a Pilates instructor because I thought I needed more structure on top of the grad school sandbox, because I'm cuckoo.
You're an overachieving queen, and like, that's going to get you places.
We're working on it.
Yeah.
So I start grad school, Pilates teaching, and my health just absolutely crumbled. And there I was, October of my first semester of grad school, and I was in group projects, and I would say, we need to do the journey map. And they would say, Eva, we did that yesterday. And I would say, okay, let's do the empathy map. And they're like, but we did that last week. And it was this insane experience of genuinely having no idea that I had done these things. And my fatigue started to get super bad. I couldn't get through the day without taking a nap. At my worst, it was so crazy, because I was thriving in grad school, and like my first year-end project, we led a public health workshop for a Department of Health organization up in the Bronx, and I was headed to go lead this workshop there. And I was trying to get a coffee on the way, and I was walking across the street, and I was limping because I was in so much joint pain. And it just felt like the gears were grinding with no oil. And here I'm supposed to be a Pilates teaching, able-bodied 28-year-old, 29-year-old, and I couldn't walk.
You're just like, what the fuck is going on?
I was so sick. And so obviously I was not creating a universal patient health record app, but my incredible professors at Parsons in this fellowship, they're like, you just need to commit to a community and start understanding that community. And I had kept the Lyme disease community as far away from myself as I could, because it already consumed so much of my life to constantly be thinking about what I was eating, how I was sleeping, how I was working out, what supplements I was taking. I didn't want to volunteer or give back in the space, or even really talk about it. It took up so much of my life already.
Yeah.
But I was like, all right, it's time to surrender. I know that the goodness I want to do in the world, I want to serve some type of chronically ill community, because I feel like they get left out. And right now I'm sick and I need to get healthy. So I finally started looking at the Lyme disease community, and here we are.
Here we are. Do you want to talk about what your what's in progress for you and what that looks like today and like where we're hoping to go and how people might be able to like educate themselves or get involved. Obviously, I want to link like everything in the show notes.
So where we are today, I started poking around in the Lyme community, talking to anyone who would talk to me. People are so kind and generous and willing to speak. And I have like, you know, a marketing and storytelling background, which is where we met at Salesforce doing that. And I felt that a big part of Lyme disease stagnance and lack of medical progress is a storytelling issue. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking about the rambling I just did over the last, you know, whatever minutes. And it is so hard to tell this story about Lyme disease. And it's my story. And I love telling stories and I could talk all day, but it is so complicated. Mm-hmm. At the bacterial level, it's this complicated corkscrew shaped thing that is hard to study.
And like I said, you're really fucking smart. But a lot of people, like if I had, I'm fucked. I don't know what that looks. I don't know what you're.
Stop saying that about my friend Kelly.
No,
it's
but
rude.
you know
Shut
what
up.
I mean? Like I wouldn't, and to be kicked down by a disease and then have to like learn about it. I'd be like, I'm so sorry. What?
But even still, so bacterial level, so complicated, no consensus in the medical and research community. Then not an accurate diagnostic test. Then every patient's experience is so different. I just talked about some of my cognitive, physical, arthritic, celiac, like those are my experiences. I have a friend who had sudden onset schizophrenia. I had a friend who had a consistent histamine reaction in his throat, so he couldn't eat, became malnourished. People die from complications of Lyme disease. There's a 75% higher rate of death by suicide in individuals diagnosed with Lyme disease.
If you think about the mental weight of something like this, and you couple that with, again, I feel like your experience, you know, it is your experience to share, and so many voices are not being heard or stories are not being heard because they have family members. You're fine. Doctors, you're fine. Stop. You're being weak. You're faking it. Like, just like buck up, like get some sleep. You know what I mean? And like that, while they're, you know, suffering in silence and in isolation because no one believes them and they're just being invalidated every single day. Every time they go to the doctor, I would go insane. And then you're expected to show up at the same rate and the same speed and the same agility as someone who looks as healthy as you or looks as good as you, like in terms of, you know, what their physical appearance is in the moment. It's like that stat that you just shared is very shocking. But when you really sit with it and you put yourself in the perspective of someone who's enduring that in the context of their life emotionally and the support system that they have in that way and not being as like supportive or validating, like that would destroy me.
Yeah. And that I started thinking about this recently. I'm a tough cookie. I have a high pain tolerance. And honestly, the hardest part of having Lyme disease is that emotional burden. Again, I'm a pretty good communicator and storyteller, and I try to explain my experience to people and why, and that chronic Lyme, doctors say chronic Lyme isn't real. And people look at me like I have a third eye, and people just don't get it and they don't believe me. And I don't think it's because they don't want to, but it's like,
they've never seen it represented.
And how do we figure out what this story is and how do we talk about it to make it resonate? And I realized that, you know, I could endure, I think, most physical symptoms, but the emotional burden of having to explain this over and over again and still not feel like my experience was understood or to not have hope that, you know, Mayo Clinic and Stanford are investing in this and they recognize it and they want to do good for it. Like that emotional burden of not being believed or seen or understood, I realize everything in life is based around human connection. That is literally the meaning of life, is being able to connect with other people.
Yeah.
And when you are in your lowest point and you're sick and all you need is human connection to help you get out of that physical pain and whatnot, and when you need that human connection the most, you can't find it because people don't get it.
Yeah.
That is the most isolating, lonely experience ever. And so as I started doing that Lyme community work, I was like, everyone is so frustrated and so alone and so isolated because this stupid, complicated story is not landing and we need to figure out how to tell it. And so I started ideating on what that could look like. And now, about a year and change later, we are starting to pull LymeLnk out of the ether and into the universe, and are founding a nonprofit for Lyme disease. And we want to combat Lyme and tick-borne disease by with community storytelling and widespread education. And we want to work with the community to figure out, we're all telling different stories. Well, what's working? We want to co-create and co-design a narrative with the community and then tell it to people and get the word out. And my goal is, in the same way that Susan G. Komen put breast cancer on the map. 20 years ago, people didn't know as much about breast cancer. It wasn't as mainstream. Now, everyone knows the pink ribbon. There are these incredible walks. There's partnerships with Estee Lauder and Yoplait and New Balance, and people know how to prevent breast cancer, how to get a mammogram. Like, they know the ABCs of breast cancer. I want to do that for Lyme disease. So how can we walk into a bar or a restaurant and just make sure that everyone knows the basic prevention, the basic diagnostics, and the basic way to have a conversation with their doctor? And we are so just getting started. There are so many incredible people in the Lyme community that are doing what I keep referring to as like technical services. Like, they're providing treatment grants, they're providing research funding and support groups, and they're serving the community. And that is the most important work that needs to be done. But as they're so focused on meeting those needs, no one has time and resources to think about this storytelling problem. But like, that's my background and that's how I think about things. So what we want to try to bring into this community is solving this storytelling problem. And we want to work, again, with patients and community leaders to craft that and get creative in the way that we tell that story and how we reach people. And again, we're just getting started.
I am so proud of you. I also just realized, like, marketing, I obviously know with products, marketing is so important. But similarly with like a nonprofit or a message is important in everything. If you want people to understand something, there has to be a message, there has to be a story. It's almost like LymeLnk is going to be the CMO of Lyme disease. Like, all of those people are on the ground doing that very important work, like very much patient-facing work. Let you be the behind-the-scenes actor of crafting the story so that people know the work they are doing and they know what Lyme is, and they can, hear about all of that from you while they're doing the important work.
100%.
Because this is equally as important work.
100%. And it's just, we need momentum and we need engagement and we need bottoms up demand to give this issue attention. I didn't even rattle off some of the stats, but 14.5% of the world's population has had Lyme disease. That's over 1 billion people globally. There's over 500,000 cases of Lyme disease in the US annually alone, and that statistic is grossly underestimated for a whole slew of reasons. So there's millions and billions of people, depending on how you're slicing and dicing it, with Lyme disease. And we don't even know how many people are going undiagnosed. Misdiagnosis is a huge issue. So many people go years being told that they have MS, that they have Parkinson's, that they have all these other diseases, only to figure out that it's Lyme years later. And all of these things aside, again, we're not getting the resources we need and deserve to make progress. And like I said, I think part of that is the storytelling issue, because if there's a competition for resources, for medical funding, for training, for everything, there's a competition for resources, but Lyme, people don't get Lyme, then we're not gonna win that competition. So we need to figure out a story that resonates with people, that says like, this matters and this is a problem, so that when there is that competition for resources, we get it and we can make that medical progress and advancement.
Yes. I'm so proud of you. There needs to be innovation, and you're innovating, and you're like young and energized on good days, and you're energized by this. And in order to have something you've never had, you have to do things you've never done. So for Lyme to get the recognition it deserves, someone has to take a different approach. And like, I'm really, really proud of you. I think you are using your intelligence and your smarts for the greater good. And I'm so behind you 150%. I'm so, like, I was trying to not get emotional towards the end because I'm so proud to be your friend. I'm so grateful for all that you've taught me about so many things, not just Lyme. I am so proud of you on the days that you show up for yourself when days get really hard, because I've seen you have really hard days, and I've seen the impact that this has made on your life, good and bad. And I know that the ending of this story of Eva with Lyme is going to end beautifully, because you are going to tackle this. Like, you are going to tackle this for yourself, and then you are also going to help other people tackle it as a ripple effect of LymeLnk. And I'm very, very proud of you, and I love you so much, and I'm so grateful that you sat here with me today.
Thank you so much. I'm going to try not to cry too. The last thing I'll say is having friends like you and people that believe in you and people that support you through these things is, like I said before, the meaning of life and what makes life worth living and makes it possible to do these things. And I am a full moment of transparency. There has been so much self-doubt, and I'm a very confident person. Whereas my friend Meg will tell you that I am perhaps her least humble friend. It's a joke.
We're not humble. Like, we're not.
Anyway, I'm a very confident person, but the amount of self-doubt throughout this journey, partially because, I am somehow reading that my illness doesn't exist when I'm in medical journals. But just like the self-doubt on the medical level, or the imposter syndrome of trying to found an organization, like, there is just so much self-doubt always. But having hype women cheerleaders to support you and encourage you to do it is so important. And the other piece is, I heard this at a medical conference recently, and I wish that I could quote the person right now, but someone said that their grandma said to them that when bad things are happening to people, they often say, "Why me?" And their grandma would say, "Why not you?" And I think that is what I'm trying to channel with this, is like, this has happened, I've dealt with it, whatever. But why not? Why didn't this happen to me? Why not me? And I think that's why the story piece is so important to me, because that's what I feel like I can contribute to the space, is figuring out how to just absolutely nail a narrative that people finally get it. And let me be honest, I don't even feel like I've done that with my own personal story yet. So there's so much work that needs to be done. But I guess the last bit of encouragement is, like, no matter what you're doing or whatever hardship you're going through, like, not why you, why not you? And another friend once said to me, like, how do you take the worst thing that's ever happened to you and make it the best thing that ever happened to you? And so it's not always pretty, but we're trying to do that.
Life is not all sunshine and rainbows, and yin yang is a real thing. Like, you can't have the good without the bad. You can't have the bad without the good. Like, it's all part of the story. Like, you also, when you read a book, like, if nothing bad happens, or there's no challenge, or there's no hurdle, like, what the fuck is this? What's the story? You know what I mean? That's what I tell myself when things are, getting a little bit too, like, plot heavy in terms of challenge. But I love you, Eva. I'm so grateful for you. Where can everyone find LymeLnk?
So right now, again, we're in our very early stages, but we do have a website up and running, LymeLnk.org. Link is just LNK. We're trying to be the missing link in the community, connecting folks with stories. But yes, LymeLnk.org, or on Instagram as, again, LymeLnk. We can
link everything in the show notes.
Everything. And yeah, I think that's it.
I love you. I'm so proud of you.